History of Scouting in the Philippines. Scouting activities in the Philippines have been promoted by various organizations. The YMCA, the Boy Scouts of America, the Camp Fire Girls, the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, the Girl Scouts of the Philippines, and the Boy Scouts of China. Youth Scouting was founded in the Philippines in 1910 in Manila by Elwood Stanley Brown, 1883-1924, of the YMCA. The Boy Scouts of Kalibo, now Kalibo in Aklan, was founded on April 22, 1922 by a certain Mr. Ong. The Boy Scouts of America Philippine Islands Council No. 545 was founded in 1923 in Manila by the Rotary Club of Manila. The Boy Scouts of the Philippines was legally established in 1936 in Manila through the work of 3 men. Josephus Emil Hamilton Stevenot, 1888-1943, Tomas Confessor y Valenzuela, 1891-1951, and Manuel Luis Quezon y Molina, 1878-1944, and the organization started activities in 1938. The 1973 celebration of the Golden Jubilee of Philippine Scouting and the Golden Jubilee Jamboree of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines were dated from the establishment of the BSA Philippine Islands. Council No. 545 in 1923, but the 2014 Philippine Scouting Centennial Jamboree commemorated the founding of the Lorillard Spencer Troop in 1914. In 1910, the first troops organized by Elwood Stanley Brown, physical director of the Manila YMCA. In 1912, Elwood Stanley Brown recognized by Baden Powell as Chief Scoutmaster. In 1913, troops were organized by Mark Thompson, Antonio Torres, Domingo Ponce, and Francisco Varona. In 1914, the Lorillard Spencer Troop organized in November in Zamboanga City by Sherman L. Kaiser. In 1921, Scouting started at Silliman Institute under the auspices of its church. They applied for registration to BSA National Headquarters, New York, in 1922, and received their document in January 1923, some 8 or 9 months before the creation of the BSA Philippine Islands Council No. 545. On April 19, 1922, a certain Mr. Ong of Kalibo Capiz, now Kalibo Aklan, organized the Boy Scouts of Kalibo, which the Governor-General Leonard Wood at that time acknowledged in his letter dated January 2, 1923. In 1923, the Rotary Club established the Boy Scouts of America Philippine Islands Council No. 545 in October. In 1931, experimentation was conducted in both Sea Scouting and Cub Scouting. In 1933, the Philippines made first participation in an international scout event. With the BSA Philippine Islands Council delegation embedded in the BSA contingent to the 4th World Scout Jamboree in Budapest, Hungary. In 1934, Rover Scouting was introduced. The BSA Shanghai District was placed under the supervision of the BSA Philippine Islands Council No. 545. In 1936, the Boy Scouts of the Philippines was established by a legislative act. The first BSP president and chief scout was Josephus Stevenot. In 1937, the BSA Philippine Islands Council No. 545, meeting in October, decided on the handover of its properties and responsibilities to the nascent BSP. In 1938, the BSP was inaugurated by President Manuel Quezon on January 1, and started functioning. Ezequiel Villacorta was appointed the first Chief Scout Executive of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, in imitation of the BSA Chief Scout Executive. In 1947, the BSP made its first participation in an international event, with the BSP contingent to the 6th World Scout Jamboree in Moisson, France. In 1953, the first Wood Badge course was conducted at BSP Camp Grey Zur in Novaliches, Quezon City. In 1954, the first BSP National Scout Jamboree was held at Rolling Hills, Valera, Quezon City. Dr. Mariano Villarama de los Santos served on the World Scout Committee from 1957 until 1959. In 1959, the 10th World Scout Jamboree was held at the National Scout Reservation, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, at the foot of Mount Makiling, in the province of Laguna. This was the first World Scout Jamboree outside Europe and Canada. In 1960,
the Cub Scout program was revised to replace American symbols,
e.g. Bobcat, Bear Cub, Wolf Cub, Lion Cub with Philippine motifs e.g. Kawan, Mother USA, Chief USA, Young USA, Luon, Molave, Nara, Leaping USA. In 1961, the Boy Scout program was revised to replace American symbols e.g. eagle with Philippine motifs e.g. Majanu, Jose Rizal.
In 1963, 24 members of the BSP delegation to the 11th World Scout Jamboree in Marathon, Greece, died in a plane crash in the sea off the coast of Mumbai, India.
Streets in the South Triangle district of Quezon City were later named in their memory. In 1968, Boy Scouts, Rovers, and Scouters joined in the search and rescue operations for victims of the Ruby Tower collapse in August. For the services rendered by the Scouts, the BSP organization was awarded by President Ferdinand Marcos with a Presidential Gold Medal the following year. In 1970, Senior Scouting officially launched as part of the BSP program.
It has 3 sections:
Air Gray Uniform, Land Dark Green, and Seat White. In 1971, Ambassador Antonio C. Delgado was elected chairman of the World Scout Conference, becoming the first Filipino to hold this position. In 1972, BSP membership hit the 1 million mark. In 1973, the Golden Jubilee Jamboree and First Asia Pacific held at the National Scout Reservation. The Jamboree song, Kapitarang Paglilingkod, reflected the Bagong Lipunan regime of President Ferdinand Marcos.
In 1974-75, the Cub Scout name is Filipinized.
The Filipino alphabet at that time did not include the letter C.
So, Cub was replaced with Cab. However, since Cab was not actually a Filipino word, it was contrived as an acronym for Kabataan Alay Sabayan, and written in all caps.
In 1975-86, in compliance with the orders of President Marcos, the Boy Scouts of the Philippines was renamed Kapitarang Scouting Pilipinas, literally meaning Scout Brotherhood of the Philippines. The Scout age groups were reduced from 4 to 2. The Scout Oath and Scout Law were revised.
A new Scout badge was devised.
President Ferdinand Marcos took the title of Chief Scout, the first Philippine head of state to hold the title. In 1986, the Golden Jubilee of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines 1936–86. In the aftermath of the People Power Revolution,
the name Kapatirang Scout ng Pilipinas was abandoned and the organization reverted to its original name, Boy Scouts of the Philippines, in 1990–91. A program was created for preschool boys and named Kid Scouting.
Since KID is English and not Filipino, it was contrived as an acronym for Kabatang Imanumulit Diwa, and written in all caps. In 1991, the 12th Asia-Pacific Jamboree was held at Philippine Scouting Center, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna. In 1992, the old BSP badge was reinstated. In 1993, the Philippines hosted the first ASEAN Scout Jamboree. In 1997, the Second World Scout Parliamentary Union held in Manila. In 1999, the first Venture Scout Jamboree was held on Ilian Hills, Origa City, Camarines Sur, Bicol. In 2007, the BSP observed the World Centennial of the Scout Movement. In 2009–10, the BSP hosted the 26th Asia-Pacific Jamboree, the 28th of December 2009 to the 3rd of January 2010. This was the third APR Jamboree in the Philippines. In 2011,
the BSP celebrated 75 years of Philippine Scouting. In 2013, the National Peace Jamboree held on Mount Makiling in Laguna, in Capitol Hills Scout Camp in Cebu, and the BSP's Camp Malagas in Davao. In 2014,
Centennial 1914–2014 of the defunct Laurelard Spencer Troop. A Centennial Jamboree was held in 3 venues: Marikina, Luzon, Cebu City, Visayas, and Zamboanga City, Mindanao.